All right, here we go. So we're talking about trust and credibility, and this presentation, at least partly, is based on the book "The Speed of Trust" by Stephen M. R. Covey. And if you've ever heard of Stephen Covey, he's the guy that wrote The Seven Habits, and Stephen M. R. Covey is his son. So this is a really good book, Trust and Credibility. So I would recommend it if anybody wants to read it. So before we really talk about trust, though, I want to talk about negotiation. So there are two types of negotiation. And if you think of negotiation, negotiation is just interaction between two people or multiple people. You know, negotiation can be the head nod as you're walking down the street, acknowledging somebody. It can be opening up a door for somebody. It can be an argument. It can be, interactions with a customer. It can be interactions with your supervisor. It can be interactions within your family. So that's all I'm talking about when we look at negotiation. We're not talking about like a hostage situation. That's not what we mean by negotiation. But there are two main kinds. There's collaborative negotiation, and that's when two people are collaborating, meaning they have the same goal in mind and they're working together to hit the same goal or to have the same type of outcome. And then there's competitive negotiation, and that's when both people are competing against each other to try to get kind of a leg up, so to speak. And so collaborative negotiation is a win-win situation where the idea is that both parties win, and that should be the goal going into it. And then competitive negotiation is one wins and one loses. And this is not just totally wrong and right and good and bad. This isn't a black and white situation where collaborative negotiation is always the best way to go and competitive negotiation is not, or vice versa. But really, it comes down to wisdom to know when to enter into a collaborative negotiation relationship or a competitive negotiation relationship. And the problem, though, in our world is that too often we find ourselves in a competitive negotiation. Why am I talking about negotiations? Because this is kind of the background to trust and credibility, which we'll be talking about. In collaborative negotiation is mutual edification. It represents interdependence where people depend on each other. And competitive negotiation is more of a tug of war or a battle, and it's independence, where you're kind of apart from the others because you can do it on your own, that kind of thing. Credibility really comes from trust, and trust is what you gain when you have good negotiation skills. So negotiation leads to trust, and trust leads to good credibility, and the good credibility helps you with your negotiation skills, and the cycle just keeps going around. And it can be a spiral uphill, or it could be a spiral downhill as well. If you're not very good at negotiations, people aren't going to trust you. And if people don't trust you, you're not going to have good credibility, and so on and so forth. And you can, this can spin the other way as well. And so that's kind of the relationship with negotiation, trust, and credibility. So we want to be good negotiators, and that requires a lot of trust. So let's talk about the trust crisis. A recent study conducted by British sociologist David Halpern reveals only 30% of Americans believe that other people can be trusted. That means that about a third of Americans really don't trust anybody. 36% of employees believe that their leaders act with honesty and integrity. So that's only a third of employees believe that their leaders act with honesty and integrity. So that means 2/3 of the people believe that their leaders do not act with honesty and integrity. So that's even a higher, that's double the number of people that just believe that other people in general can't be trusted. So that doesn't look good for leaders there. Over the past 12 months, 76% of employees surveyed have observed illegal or unethical conduct in the job. And I don't know what qualifies as that, but I think you guys would agree. We probably see some of that going on in 35 years of restaurant leadership. I'll tell you, I've seen a lot of theft, and I've seen a lot of shortcuts, and a lot of things happen. And a lot of it has come to us through my employees. People just get ratted out all the time by their fellow employees. It's crazy. It's I don't know that that's always the case if you don't have trust with your team. If the boss is the bad guy, that boss will probably never find out about the theft going on. So the following percentage of students acknowledge cheating in order to get into graduate school. Liberal arts, 34%. Education students, 52%. Medical students, 63%. So how would you like that? You're getting a surgery, and just before you go into surgery, you're thinking, there's about a 60% chance this guy cheated to get into med school. So maybe he'll take some shortcuts when he's got me opened up. I don't know. Law students, 63%. That one's not quite as hard to believe, but then business students, 75% cheated. So there's some cutthroat going on there. There's definitely some competitive negotiations taking place there. So Anyway, so trust is definitely a problem. Consider the following scandals: corporate scandals, Enron, Fannie Mae, Martha Stewart, Bernie Madoff, and then Olympic scandals, performance enhancing drugs. You guys are all runners, so you guys probably all see that. Lance Armstrong, sex scandals like the Me Too movement, Jeffrey Epstein, human trafficking. There's just a lot of reasons not to trust. Political scandals, religious scandals, cyber crimes, all of that. So we have a ton of reason to be skeptical of each other and just of people in general. But if we just listen to the media and we just really buy into all the hype and the hyperbole that goes on, it's really easy to not trust. So it's easy to get caught up in that. The trust crisis, family crisis. Over 50% of marriages end in divorce. About 30% of homes are single parent households. 5+ children die every day from abuse in the US. Every 2 minutes, someone in the US is sexually assaulted. DHS in the foster system is overwhelmed and understaffed. My wife and I were foster parents for about 10 years, and we saw this firsthand. Family crisis is a launching pad for future personal and relational issues. If unresolved, they can define your future. So what I mean by that is if you have experienced family crisis in your life, you grew up with some stress and some things that are going on that really makes it hard for you to trust possibly, then that is it really is a launching pad for future personal relational issues if it's not resolved. And that means that at some point along the way in our journey to adulthood, we can choose to face some of our issues and get past them, and some of that dark stuff that happens in our childhood possibly doesn't have to keep defining us going forward, or we can let it keep defining us going forward, and we can allow that to hinder our level of trust going forward. So unresolved issues haunt people and perpetuate the problems in future generations if the cycle is not broken. So part of this that I want to talk about with trust and credibility is not really what's happening outside in the world, in the culture, but it's about what's going on in our own minds and our own hearts. Are we what do we think about other people? How do we trust other people? Have we been conditioned not to trust people? So have we been has somebody painted a picture of this world being an untrustworthy place, and we see that picture and we buy into that, and that's what our image is? And is it possible for us to break out of that and to see the world the way it really is? And I think the world is not nearly as scary and untrustworthy as what maybe the picture has been painted to us. So we're talking about trust and credibility. Let's just start with credibility real quick. So we'll kind of work backwards. So credibility is the established reputation that people perceive of us based on observations over time. It is the amount of trust and respect you accumulate from others based on their experience with you. Okay? Credibility is never on your own terms, but rather on the terms of those whom you influence. This is a really important idea to think about, because when we think about our credibility, it's the esteem that everyone else has for us, and it doesn't give a crap about what you think about you. Okay, your credibility has nothing to do with what you think about you, or what is owed to you, or what the kind of respect and honor you think you should get from other people. Credibility is completely it's completely apart from your opinion. You cannot determine your own credibility. You can only build or destroy it in the eyes of others by your behavior and actions towards others. All right. So that's an interesting way of thinking about it. I've had a lot of people over the years that have said, hey, I deserve a raise. I deserve at least this much. So what they're doing is they're determining their own credibility. They're like, well, why do you think you need a raise? And so what if somebody really has a good idea of what credibility is, they would come and they would say, hey, what do I need to do in order to gain the kind of credibility that would earn me a raise? And that would be the acknowledgement of, what do I need to do so that I can be deemed credible in the eyes of you and everyone else? And so that's a reversal of kind of perspective. Your credibility is up to others to decide. What they see in you is up to you. So what is up to us in our capabilities is the way we behave towards other people. And if we behave in a way that's going to gain credibility, we will indeed gain credibility, and vice versa if we don't. Okay, credibility lost equals trust lost. So here's where we kind of make the connection between credibility and trust. When credibility is compromised, trust is lost too. Okay, when trust is lost, relationships disintegrate. And remember, we talked about that negotiation is really just interaction between two people. And when two people don't trust each other, it's really hard for that relationship to really build upon itself and get stronger. It's usually going to just disintegrate, specifically if that negotiation is based on competitive as opposed to collaborative. When relationships disintegrate, people lose hope. And that's true too. So think about an organization. So you got an organization, maybe it's like my organization or like your organization, where you've got, several dozen or more people working. And if the organization has credibility, there's a good chance it's because the people in the organization, particularly at the top of the organization, has credibility. And if they have credibility, there's a pretty good chance that the reason why they have credibility is because they have trust. So they can give trust, they trust other people, but then also they can get trust. They are trustworthy, and other people can trust them, right? And when that's the case, the relationships with the rest of the organization kind of fosters a lot of hope. So people can look forward to the future of this company and really have hope. Like, wow, I like working for a company that's credible and has trustworthy people. I like being kind of in an interdependent culture. And this is, wow, we can really go places. We can do a lot of things. We can open up another store in North Liberty and Cedar Rapids, and maybe Waterloo and Davenport. And we can, hope is good. And hope also can kind of be a motivation for bigger visions as well. So a few quotes here. I'm not upset that you lied to me. I'm upset that from now on, I can't believe you. Nietzsche says that. It's true that when somebody lies to you, it's disappointing when they lie to you, but the bigger disappointment is the way you will think about them going forward. The way you will, when you lose trust like that, it's really hard to get it back. George MacDonald says, to be trusted is a greater compliment than being loved. The first time I read that quote, I thought, oh man, I don't know. Isn't love supposed to be everything? I mean, gosh, you look in the Bible and it's like love everywhere. But to be trusted is a greater compliment than being loved. So trust takes much time to be established. However, it can be destroyed in an instance. We know that trust can be gone in a moment and credibility can go with it. This is the moment that maybe I'll ask the question, then if maybe just one person wants to share real quick. So think of a person who has little credibility in your eyes. And then does that person have much influence on you? Why or why not? So I don't want anybody to give any names, but does anybody want to share about maybe somebody that has little credibility in their eyes?
Oh, so I mean, yeah, I can probably say this name without people getting offended. I immediately thought of our ASICS shoe rep. Um, I met the guy once in my first 2 years of ordering, and I've met my other reps probably 15 times each. So no, he doesn't have influence on me. I mean, like I'm not, there's reps that are really good for us that I'm willing to bend a little bit for because they bend for me, and it's a mutual relationship.
Yeah.
So, I'm more willing to give a chance on, hey, Saucony's got this new shoe and we're really jacked about it. I would love if you guys would try a size run. I'm way more willing to do something like that because our Saucony rep does a lot of things for us and he's trustworthy and reliable. But if my ASICS rep says that, I don't care, honestly. It was to the point last year where we pulled ASICS out of a couple shops because we were having issues. They weren't doing anything to help us. So that led me to, why would I want to do him any favors when he's not being helpful for our business? So I think that was the first example that came to my mind.
Yeah. What's interesting too is the deception of distrust. Now, and here's where we can really run into a problem. When there's not trust, when there's no trust between you and another person. And so let's say that person gives you some advice about something, right? They give you some advice. And because you don't trust them and you don't think they have credibility, you're just going to blow off that advice. Well, here's the problem. They might be right. And because you don't trust them, you don't receive the benefit of that advice. And so trust is keeping you from receiving something good. What if you don't trust your doctor, but your doctor has the cure for the disease that you have, but you don't trust him? So he tells you what to take, gives you your marching orders, and he's completely right because he's an expert. But because you don't trust him, you don't take the meds. You don't do what you're supposed to do. So trust can harm us too. We think of distrust as a protective measure to keep us from getting harmed by people, but it can really harm us because sometimes people really do have our best interests in mind, and if we don't trust them, then we can miss out on that. So Tyler, think of a person who has much credibility in your eyes.
Like care and service towards others, not to be a dead horse, but trustworthiness. you know, I could trust that they're coming to me with something that they actually think is a good idea that's going to help us. Those are a few of the main ones.
And I think most of us, I shouldn't say all of us, but I think most of us have a few people in our lives that when they have something to say to us, we trust them and their credibility is so high that we just listen because we know that we have something to gain from that. All right, let's move on. So the four cores of credibility, this is an illustration that's comes straight from the book, The Speed of Trust by Stephen M.R. Covey. And it's four different components, but it's also broken into two different components. So if you look at the illustration of a tree, you know, half of these are underground and the other half are above ground. And so there's a different purpose. At the character level is the underground level. And that starts with the deep roots of integrity. And we'll dig into that in a minute. But integrity is basically the stability, right? That's what integrity is. It's the truthfulness, the wholeness. It's without error, right? And then intention is kind of your direction. It's what's the reason you're doing it. That's the roots of everything. Our integrity and why we're doing it should be at the really at the heart of everything we do in any business. If we ask ourselves why we're selling pizza or selling shoes, we should have a good reason, right? Because pizza improves people's health. No, I'm just kidding. It puts smiles on faces. But what you guys do certainly helps. You guys, your intention, I know, in your business is talking to the leaders. You guys have a great reason why you do what you do. You bring a lot of help to people's feet. My wife too. She just bought some shoes from you guys. And then above ground here is the competence level. This is like what you do. So think about the character level is who you are, and then the competence level is what you do. This is the competence, it's your skill, and it's so on. And then the results is like what comes of that. It's like, is it happening? Are we actually getting results? So we'll talk through this here. Here's another little chart. I'll kind of breeze past this, but it kind of breaks it down a little bit: character, integrity, intent, capabilities, and results. So okay, I'll break them down here. All right, the four cores of credibility. Integrity, we'll start at the very bottom of the roots. Integrity includes honesty, telling the truth, and leaving the right impression. Congruence, or walking your talk. Humility, and the courage to do what is right. Integrity is being accountable with no excuses, right? This is a measuring stick of your integrity. You can have a pretty good idea where you're at on your integrity level if you just pay attention to the words coming out of your mouth, right? If you pay attention to the words coming out of your mouth, and if you were even to somehow record or just make a notch on the wall or something on your phone or whatever, every time you make an excuse and you count those up, man, I think some of us would be pretty alarmed at how many excuses we make through the course of the day. Now, all those excuses doesn't mean you're a horrible person, but it might mean that this big rock of integrity has a lot of chips knocked out of it that maybe shouldn't have. Think through that a little bit. Next time you make an excuse, stop and ask yourself, oh man, am I chipping away at my integrity? Everyone is looking for a hero that they can trust, a person of integrity that they can cling to for stability. So keep in mind that a person with integrity is a person that other people need. Other people are needing that. Everybody's looking for a hero. People can only be fooled for a time. Integrity flaws always come to light when under pressure. When integrity disappears, trust evaporates. So what that means is that a lot of people will put on a great face of integrity. They'll kind of put that face on that is the purpose is to impress or to give you an impression about them, but sometimes it's not true. It's because we just don't want them to see our dark places. We don't want them to see maybe our weaknesses or whatever, and that's and we think that that's a good thing to hide those, but it's really a vote against our integrity. All right, intention includes your motives, agenda, and what drives you. Agenda grows out of motive. It is what you intend to do or promote because of your motive. The agenda that generally inspires the greatest trust is one seeking mutual benefit. You want others to win. That's true. When you think about a lot of leaders in the world, I would say that the majority of the leaders probably do not lean towards mutual benefit. The majority of leaders probably are more competitive in their negotiations. They're looking to have the people around them help them with their agenda, as opposed to flipping that upside down and really working hard to help the other people with their, with everyone else's agenda. Probably most leaders have a lose-win relationship or a win-lose relationship where they're competing. And that would really explain why maybe that percentage of 63% of people don't believe that their boss or their leader is trustworthy. That would explain that, right? Okay, a person driven by pure motives will never fail to have loyal followers. And that's true. If you just took all of leaders in the world or in our country or in our city, whatever, based on those statistics, we could probably assume that maybe a third of those leaders probably really are not very trustworthy. And then maybe another third of those leaders really are trustworthy. They really have good credibility and they're trustworthy. And then there's the other third that maybe could be trustworthy if the people around them are trustworthy, and maybe have been trustworthy at times, but maybe not at other times. And so they're the ones kind of flopping back and forth that maybe struggle with trustworthy sometimes, but aren't there. I will tell you that the people that are in that upper third that really are trustworthy and have good credibility, those are the ones that everybody's looking for. They're the ones in demand, and they truly will have loyal followers, and they'll also have more opportunities than most people also. That's the quality that just rises to the top. It bubbles up to the top. Okay, people see right through selfish motives, and the selfish are blind to their own appearance and will always end up doing more harm than good. People will follow someone with an intentional vision. Intentional meaning that they actually have good intentions, and they actually have intentions. A lot of people either don't have good intentions or they're just not intentional. They just go with the flow and they just live moment to moment without really striving towards something. So people want to follow somebody that's striving towards something and actually has a valid vision. Competence. Competence is the talent, skills, knowledge, capacities, and abilities we have that enable us to perform with excellence. Some are natural and some are developed. I would suggest that the more important ones are the ones that are developed, because natural is just a starting place, but you can blow past that starting place with with hard work and dedication and grit. And this can also include current capacity. People appreciate a person who has honed their craft and display talents that lead to excellence. I mean, all you have to do is go on social media, on any of the social media sites, and you can see videos of people that are just operating at a high level of excellence, whether it's music or it's athletics or it's a speaker talking about a certain topic or subject or whatever. And the reason why we watch this stuff, we consume our time with watching people, is because we really do appreciate somebody that has honed their craft. Even if it's a circus or it's whatever it is, we just love to watch somebody do something that is far beyond what the normal person would do. Excuses will buy some time, but after a while, a person without the means to perform with excellence will be left behind and replaced by someone who can. In the leadership world, oftentimes we can confuse the skills, we can confuse the competence. We can be highly competent in one area, but maybe not so competent in another area. And so what this means is if we're highly competent in one area, but in the areas that we're not competent in, when we make excuses and kind of cover over them, just hoping that our strengths, the things that we are competent in, will kind of keep us going. After a while, that will tear down our credibility. And if we don't pay attention to the area that we lack our competence in, if we don't pay close attention to that and stop dismissing it and really hone in, especially if it's in the leadership world, right? When you go from a technician to a manager, all that means is that the technician is the doer, the manager is the decider, right? And then the leader is the influencer. When you're moving up through those stages, you have to get good at them. If you're a good technician, it doesn't mean you're going to be a good manager. You have to learn the competence to be a manager. And if you're a good manager, it doesn't mean that you're going to be a good leader. You have to learn the competence and become a more competent leader. You can't just fall back on your technician skills and so on. I've experienced that a lot in our company when we promote people. Sometimes people can be great managers, but they're not able to be great leaders. And so we have to really spend some extra time either to turn them into leaders or put them in a position where they don't have to lead and they can manage. Emotional intelligence plays a part in competence as well. And emotional intelligence has several components. We won't go through it all, but one of them is being self-aware, being able to look at yourself and really see what you're competent in and what you're not competent in, and being able to adjust accordingly. If you know there's something you really need help with, whether it's the administrative side, or maybe it's production and speed, or maybe it's the leadership side. If you know you need help with it, you got to lean into it. got to lean into it and get help so you don't fall short on your competence. Okay, results. What is your track record? Becoming an accomplished person takes much time and perseverance. You must have the ability to identify the goal, refuse distractions, and move in a laser-like direction without compromise to completion. I always love it when I find a person that's high on the production side that can just get stuff done, and they always do. Those are the people you can trust to get things done. They're the ones that's the quarterback that can win the game at the end. It's the guy on the basketball team that is going to get the ball on the last shot. When it comes down to it, and that comes from when people get those kind of opportunities, it's because they're trusted and they have that kind of credibility. A person who gets results will always be sought after. A person with excuses will be left behind. A person who believes they are valued by their results will always strive to be more valuable through results. A person who believes they are valued by their intentions or efforts will try for a time, but unintentionally fail to produce. In other words, what this means, if these last two are a little confusing, what that means is there's a difference between I'm going to do this and I'm going to try, right? If you've got somebody that you're leading, giving you kind of a prognosis for the future on maybe an area that they're falling short on, if they tell you, okay, I'm going to get this fixed, I'm going to do this, you can have a little bit more trust that there's probably a decent chance that they'll actually do that. But if they say to you, well, I'll try, but then there's a great chance that they're going to fail, and it's really hard to trust that. So people that focus on results are always going to be more trustworthy than people that try to get you to see their value through their efforts. Sometimes it doesn't matter how hard you tried. If you didn't get the job done, then you failed. And that's the cold, hard truth. And people that fail are just never going to have the same kind of credibility and results as people that just get it done. Because people that get it done, they just figure out how to get it done. And those are great attributes that we can trust. 4 quadrants here, trust and commitment. So there's 4 quadrants here. I'll talk through them. So everybody's going to fall into one of these compartments with all of your relationships or in all of your negotiations. Now, it could be that nobody's perfect, so we're not always going to be in the good quadrant all the time. We're going to fall through this. But as we grow up and we mature, we can see how we can spend less time in some of these quadrants. So the first one, conditional trust. You can trust what I say as long as you don't do something to make me not trust you, also known as a contract, half commitment. I had a family member get married a few years ago, and their wedding vow was a little bit different than I'd ever heard. It was definitely not an unconditional wedding vow. It was, I will love you as long as, and I don't remember what the exact vows were, but I will love you as long as or as long as we. And it was really weird. It's like they gave themselves a way out in case the other person fails them. So it was like a half commitment. It was more like a contract. I'll do this. I'll do my part as long as you do your part. Once you don't do your part, I'm out of here, right? And so it was like a conditional trust. But especially if we're in a competitive negotiation, we can really tend to do that, and we can justify it too. In fact, I mean, it is justifiable in a lot of cases. That's why we have contracts. So we can definitely find ourselves there. Relative trust in the bottom left here. I tell the truth when it benefits me. When it doesn't, I will sometimes change my story to make things easier for me or others. This is no commitment. So the conditional trust was half commitment. This relative trust is no commitment. I'm going to say what I'm going to say. It's probably going to serve me more than it's going to serve anybody else, or it might serve somebody that I care about. And if changing the story a little bit or kind of fudging things here and there just kind of smooths things over and makes it easier for me, then that's what I'll do. And of course, people, sometimes it takes a little bit of time spent with somebody before you realize that. But when you realize it, you don't trust them much after that. Upper right corner here, hypocritical trust. You can trust what I say, but don't pay attention to what I do. I know the right way. I just like to do things my way. And so I'll call this independent commitment. This is a person that's not necessarily a good rule follower. They really kind of have their own ways to do it, and they'll acknowledge that there is a right way, and they may even train other people to do it the right way. But when people aren't looking, they'll just kind of do it their own way. And so that's hypocritical trust. And we can, you can lose credibility with that too. And then here's the last one, the bottom right, the unconditional trust. You can trust me no matter what. I am fully accountable for what I say and do. I will own my mistake and fix my own problems. My word is my bond. And this is a full commitment to trust. This is where we really start to stand out. Remember, we talked about the top third of the people, of the leaders, generally are pretty trustworthy. That's because they spend most of their time in this quadrant. Maybe not all of their time. We're all human, but for the most part, we spend that much, the majority of our time in this bottom right quadrant. we're getting close on time here. I'm going to leave you with two things. And these are two things that maybe you guys could focus on. And they're actually interrelational things. So if you guys as a group of leaders make these two things a theme for the next month, I think you'll start to develop some really good habits. And here's the two things. The first thing is, what can I do for you today? If you guys over the next month were to ask each other this question like once a day, like whoever you're with, whenever you come into contact with one of the others, ask the other person, hey, what can I do for you today? If you really, envelop that into your culture every day, you'll see some results. So that's the first one. The other thing too, and this one could be a little more difficult for some. And the second one is, I give you permission to hold me accountable. I give you permission to hold me accountable. Here's why this is so important. When somebody tries to hold you accountable that you have not given them permission, it just sucks. And usually that's when it turns into competitive. It's like, wait a minute, who are you to tell me what, But the flip side of that is when you give somebody permission to hold you accountable and then they do, it doesn't sting. You've disarmed the pride that makes it sting. It's that puffing your chest out and holding up your pride and preserving your image that makes it hard to receive accountability for people. That's what makes it so difficult is we want the weak part of us to go unnoticed. We don't want people to notice the things that we need to improve on. And so we'll just kind of put this mask on that there's nothing wrong with me. I'm the rock star, whatever. But if we were able to just say, hey, I give you permission to hold me accountable. Now you're also going to trust that person is going to do it in a loving way too, and not, hey, you jerk, you messed up again. That's not what it's about. It's about accountability. It's not about criticism. You're not giving anybody permission to be critical of you. You're just giving people permission to be accountable. So those are my two challenges. If you guys could put those into your world, I'll bet you'll see some differences. I'd love to hear what the feedback on that is in later times. So